Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining our AI webinar that's nothing about AI. First of all, to all of our customers that have joined today, really great to see so many faces that have joined us throughout multiple events over the past few months and years. So thanks very much for joining. Similarly, I can see a huge amount of new faces on the webinar as well. So thank you very much for joining, and hopefully this will be a really good introduction into Lima. With that being said, I suppose we'll do some introductions. So first and foremost, my name is George Eyre. I'm an account director here at Lima. I've been in the IT industry for around about 10 years now, and most of that time has been within MSP world, that's Managed Service Partner world. But I've also done a fairly significant stint at the cybersecurity services business. So I've kind of got one eye on holistic IT and another on security. Over to you, Martin.
Thanks, George. So yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm Martin Ingram, I'm the CTO at Lima. Been in the industry 25 years, which is quite a frightening number, actually. But been in Lima 14 years, but my role and kind of background here is in kind of technical strategy and business operations. So super relevant to the context of the conversation today.
Oh, thanks. As most of my customers will know that I love the sound of my own voice, you'll be very pleased to hear that my job today is simply to bookend this webinar with an initial intro into Lima and some of my own thoughts on AI, and then come in at the end to collate any questions that you might have throughout the webinar. So please do remember to add any questions in the chat box as we go along. As an introduction to Lima, we've been around for around 25 years, and we started our journey as a typical VAR, that's value-added reseller. Our main responsibilities were to design, configure, and deliver infrastructure and networking solutions for our customers. We very quickly developed our capabilities into modern workplace and ultimately managed service as well, to help our customers to manage the solutions that we had put in place. And that really triggered the transition to becoming a full MSP, which we are today. We've grown predominantly through our long-term partnerships, our outcome and value focus, and our insight-led approach. We've worked in a diverse range of industries, which has really given us the understanding and knowledge of recurring challenges and how to solve them. Delivering a quality MSP service has really set the foundations for our customers for us to then go on and support them to transform further and innovate. The insight-led approach gives us the mechanism and focus for that innovation and understanding the challenges to drive towards those outcomes. We really believe that combining the knowledge of our customers' environment through tried and tested and well-documented set of assessments with experts in their field in the form of our solution architects and technical experts in the background, with our vast range of technology partners, aligning those together really gives our customers the value that they need to solve challenges and really deliver those business outcomes. Our account team use this methodology day in, day out. They are a free resource to our customers, and they use this to problem solve and plan to deliver the best possible service we can to achieve those outcomes. We also collaboratively develop roadmaps to really focus on those business goals. Today, we're here to talk about AI, though, without talking about AI. So with that, I'll share some of my thoughts. It's a fast-changing and quickly advancing technology. And ultimately, for businesses, the key is staying safe and secure, but also making sure that you don't fall behind. I suppose 24 months ago, my advice would have been very, very different to what it is today. And that would have been a very cautious approach with a lot of different risks of AI, including data loss, inaccurate outputs, AI sprawl, and of course, the vast expense of implementing these AI tools. Now, though, for one simple fact, that advice has changed. And that fact is AI is out there and it's not going anywhere. If you don't get on board, you will be left behind. Staff have personal access to these tools, meaning that all of the risks that I've cited above still remain or are greater, arguably. They've got tools like ChatGPT and Gemini, or potentially DeepSeek as well. And we don't want any sensitive company data going into any of those tools. How do we implement safely and maximize the benefits of AI then? Well, that's what Martin Ingham, our CTO, is here to talk about today. He's been living the AI rollout within Lima for the past 2 years, navigating the pitfalls and mitigating the risks where possible. And crucially, he's been finding use cases for AI within our estate, and we're now starting to see the major benefits of that work internally. So without further ado, I'll hand over to our CTO, Martin.
Thanks, George. So yeah, like George says, part of my role here is to support and develop Lima's technical strategy in terms of the products and services that we are going to offer to our customers. And you can't move or breathe without hearing somebody talk or mention AI. I mean, the technology isn't new. It's been around for 10 to 15 years in kind of its current modern form. But it kind of really burst into the mainstream 2-3 years ago with the kind of release of ChatGPT, and it's kind of exploded from there. And there's this immense pressure on businesses to feel like they need to adopt this and adopt it quickly. And George is right in his opening comments around this is a very disruptive technology. It's going to change things significantly in multiple different verticals and industries, including our own, the world that Lima operates in terms of it as an MSP, not just in terms of the products and services that we're developing for our customers, but also the way that our business operates. And the conversation that I'm going to have with you today is about how we've taken all of that learning from speaking to our technology partners, speaking to our customers, speaking to my stakeholders within Lima, and the foundations and the kind of adoption frameworks that we've built for our own business and how that kind of can benefit our customers and how we're applying that to our customers' journey with AI. And it starts with kind of 4 key principles. First is in kind of the small to medium organizations that we operate in, the capability and way you adopt AI is very different to what you would do in a large scale enterprise organization. The resources, the skills are very different in those sides of businesses, but understanding the strengths that small businesses have, but also the weaknesses and how you tackle that and the things you need to have in place from a business structure point of view. A lot of the technical principles, so your data and security strategies, and we'll talk a little bit more about the foundational elements and the role that they play. But this is probably these last 2 are the ones that we see most customers falling down on, really struggling to identify a starting use case. Sometimes customers try and create really complicated, massively impactful use cases and implement them, but often fail, and that kind of really kind of impacts the power of adoption within businesses. And that primarily falls down on failing to understand the importance of the people and process element of AI adoption, but also building really effective ROIs as well. Because SMB resources are typically relatively limited in terms of their ability to invest in this technology, it has to work pretty quickly. So I'm going to take you through kind of our approach to how we've adopted AI and a particular use case that we've delivered in terms of our ROI. Before we just get into the content, we just wanted to run a short poll. So we're just going to pop up a short poll for you now. If you can just apply and tick as many of those items as apply, we'll kind of see the results and then we'll move forward. Okay. So yeah, interesting results. Really appreciate you kind of contributing and giving your views in terms of where you are in terms of adoption of some of the foundations that we're about to talk through, and we'll kind of see where we get to in the next 25 minutes. Also, in terms of the advice and information we're going to share with you. So starting with the accessibility of AI in SMEs, I think there's three key areas that really need to be considered when you're starting on your AI journey. And it covers resources, technical maturity, and your overall strategy towards artificial intelligence. When you look at the resource available within a small business or medium-sized business, it's typically common that those businesses are operating with constrained budgets. It's not often that they have huge swathes of cash available to invest in speculative AI projects. There needs to be really good control in terms of cost and what that money is going to be spent on, and kind of difficulties with, or perceived difficulties with, attracting or having the right technical expertise to go on that AI journey. It's quite difficult for small businesses to justify the investment in specific AI skills, and so finding partners like Lima that can help you with that, not only the technical adoption but some elements of the kind of business adoption, which will become clearer as we go through that, is super challenging. Technical maturity, I mean, SMBs typically that we're working with are relatively advanced. Certainly some of our existing customers will understand some elements that we're talking about here. Multi-cloud is key. So when we start to look at the paths for AI and the use case for AI, having flexibility in what systems, platforms, and geography you're using, and stitching those systems together so you can take advantage of the right AI services, that kind of journey that our customers have been on around kind of adoption of the right cloud platform or multiple various cloud platforms, whether that's Azure, elements of on-premise still, Lima Cloud, Microsoft 365 services, SaaS-based products. All of those environments have AI capability, and being able to kind of bridge those and stitch those together is critical. Data is key. This is probably one of the most important elements. Having high quality data that you feed your AI technology is probably one of the most important elements, because if you have poor data, it's of low quality, and you're feeding this platform effectively misinformation, you're only going to get junk out the back of it, and you're going to fail, I think, with kind of maximizing that benefit. Security, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but security is critical. Kind of having that secure by design foundation in all of your technology stacks and your business processes is super important, and safeguards some of the issues that George raised in his opening piece. And then strategic vision, making sure that the leadership team within your business have a clear understanding of what they want to do with AI, rather than it just being something that they're responding to based on conversations they're having, or peer pressure, or kind of what other businesses are doing. Having real clarity on what they're wanting to do with artificial intelligence from that leadership team is key. Managing shadow AI. So George again referenced it a little bit, but staff and employees have access to this technology relatively easy in all sorts of different forms, and being able to control and manage the use of that, preventing leakage of your business data into those platforms which are in the public domain is super important, so that you're avoiding legality and kind of compliance issues down the line. And small to medium businesses particularly have quite a lot of technical debt and kind of legacy and complex systems. They're not always in the fortunate position of being a startup. And so managing that transition from maybe 5, 10, 30, 50 years of kind of IT use can be quite tricky. And having awareness of what's out there. So AI is an umbrella term, really, which I think it sometimes gets lost in terms of what's actually underpinning that phrase. It's the same situation that we face with cloud, and even back in kind of the late 90s, early 2000s, around kind of the dot-com bubble and all that type of stuff. This is a wide-ranging set of technologies that will be used in the right way for different needs. And so understanding what different elements of that technology does, and how you can apply or use that technology in the right use case is super key. Again, working with a partner like Lima to kind of help you on that journey is important. The focus in our business has primarily been on those that are kind of highlighted there in bold and the colours, but kind of use of conversational AI, so agent-based type discussions in terms of customer service, content generation through generative AI. So that is what ChatGPT primarily is. And then more recently, agentic AI, which is kind of the ability for AI to make semi-autonomous decisions and solve somewhat complex problems in a multi kind of process or multi-step environment. So having awareness of what's out there, what the types are, and where those applying the types of use cases that you'll eventually identify is important. So the foundational layers, everything starts with platform, like I kind of open with, but having the right platforms in place, being relatively mature in terms of that journey, in terms of single or multi-cloud use is key. So having the right systems, the right platforms, the right applications in the right location to give the best user experience is a foundational principle, and that must be adhered to, because it has a big impact on cost and kind of ability for data to flow between different environments. Security. So if you're already on a journey around some level of kind of compliance framework, whether that's some of this relatively straightforward as Cyber Essentials Plus or 27001, or some of the more sophisticated standards, that puts you in good stead for safeguarding and minimizing risk in terms of misuse of AI, and support some elements in the data layer as well. As I've already stressed, data is key. High quality, relatively easy to access data that can flow through your business, that these AI components can interact with, is super important. So having a data strategy, which we'll go into a bit of detail on shortly, is very, very important. Which then allows you to bring AI capability over the top of all of those principles. Having that technology stack underneath in a good fit for purpose state is super important for getting the best out of AI. And we often see that customers are struggling primarily in that data space. Most are on a relatively good journey with security and are pretty mature in platform, but are struggling with that data piece and kind of bringing that quality data together. And it's something that our business struggle with, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So data is at the heart. You have to be starting to think about how you go on a data journey within your organization and building the foundations of a data strategy in essence. And that starts with understanding why you're using data, what that data's for, what the use cases for that data is, knowing what that data is, where it sits, how it's used, who accesses it, how the control of that data is managed, the governance and compliance around that data. So obviously there's regulatory requirements anyway that pretty much every business in the UK is needing to adhere to. But having those governance principles and that kind of data governance frameworks in place is essential. And then having the right technology architecture, whether that's databases that hold that data, whether it's unstructured sources like SharePoint and kind of file sharing type technologies. And again, you can start to see them where this multi-cloud kind of layer underneath and stitching those pieces together starts to really come to the fore around the kind of architecture element. But building a data culture within your business, and data is the responsibility of everybody within the workplace, and it's sometimes seen as IT's problem or a compliance problem, but everybody has a role to play in terms of the quality of the data that they're working with, what they put into the systems and tools that they use. And so building that from the leadership team down and putting the support and kind of governance in place around helping your staff and people to go on that journey with you is fundamental. Security is absolutely at the heart of safe use of AI. Whether that's having the right tools to prevent things like data loss prevention, making sure you've got the right controls in place to prevent data leakage, kind of information leakage management. All of these kind of technologies are able to be controlled through things like Microsoft 365. So the technology and the capabilities there already to kind of put those things in place. And customers that are on that journey around Cyber Essentials Plus, 27001 are already kind of undertaking and starting to implement those, but having those things in place to prevent misuse of AI, leakage of that data into kind of public domain is very, very important. The ability to perform things like e-discovery and auditability of what's going on within your environment. So knowing what your staff are doing in terms of data access, in terms of accessibility to systems, visibility of what AI tools they're using, and putting the controls in place to prevent shadow AI use, and kind of restricting and putting governance in place to stop the use of those tools. It's really important that you start to work with your HR and compliance teams. One of the things that we've done at Lima early doors was really work with our kind of people and culture team to put the right policies in place, educate staff on kind of safe use of AI, and it kind of feeds into some of the people elements, which I'll talk about shortly. Again, aligning those frameworks, making sure you're kind of on that journey. If you're looking at C plus, or if you're looking at 27001, 80% of what you need for safe AI use is contained within those frameworks. Even if you're not wanting to go for a badge or an audit, just starting to think about or getting on the journey of adopting those frameworks is putting you in good stead. So we start to look more or less at the technical side and more kind of the people and kind of business elements of it. I think there's a lot of fear around AI, and this is one of the challenges that we face within our businesses. The moment you start talking about replacing certain processes, or you're starting to put AI into people's areas, it creates a sense of fear, and people automatically think that they're going to be made redundant. In our world, that definitely is not the case. We're looking like most kind of small to medium business. We're scaling, we're growing, we're a successful business. But like most businesses, there's difficulties at times with scaling in the right way. And for us, it's about bringing the right type of technology, in this case AI and process automation, to release capacity in those teams to work on more complex problems, more engaging work activities. Those people are also keen in helping you identify use cases. They're the ones that are doing these things day in, day out. They know what they're kind of repeating. They know what they don't like in their roles. Well, that's often a good place to start in terms of use cases. Finding things that people need to do but are kind of mundane or not very engaging, getting them to work with you on use case identification, and then the evaluation process is vital. And again, eliminating those low value tasks, free those teams up to focus on more engaging and mentally challenging work that is probably not right for AI at this stage, or ever, and making sure that you take your teams on a change journey, taking the time to talk to them, educate them, explain why you're doing this, what it means for them, and giving them the training as well in terms of how they're going to use these tools and this technology. And that kind of fed into the work we did around kind of creating safe use of AI and the kind of adoption and adherence to some of the policies that we've put in place. So how do you start to identify use cases? Biggest piece of advice I give you: start simple. It would be amazing if we could create a relevant use case that was the equivalent of cure for cancer in our business, but that isn't realistic, or well, maybe a noble goal is not really practical. So we started really simple. We started with something that would be relatively easy for our technical teams to understand. So we're in a semi-fortunate position that we are a tech business, so we generally understand the technology and the platforms that we're working with here. But we picked a really simple use case, an admin-heavy element of our business that was part of existing data security and system kind of integration. Which meant that the data was already ready. It was already relatively decent quality. We didn't have to do a whole load of data cleansing. We had reasonably good quality kind of data entry practices already. But we needed that use case to be impactful both for our customers, but also for our internal teams and our leadership teams. Ultimately, I'm going and seeking further investment in some of our tooling and our practices, and I've got to be able to go and demonstrate the ROI to our leadership team in terms of what it's going to mean in terms of value back to the business. But it's an outwardly viewable and visible use case, which allowed us to kind of really develop a strong ROI. Know your processes. This is super important. If you don't understand how things are flowing through your business, whilst you might find a use case, you'll have no idea how to get from the beginning in terms of what's going into that process and what's coming out the other side, and therefore build, buy, train the right AI technology to take over and work in that process, and what the decision-making process is, who's controlling some of those stage gates, what the actual output is that you're expecting from that process. I mean, it may turn into a different project whereby you identify that some of those processes maybe aren't fit for purpose, but being able to either use this to build process flows and maps, or use existing process flows and maps if you've got them, with all the key kind of inputs, outputs, and people that participate in that process. It puts you in a really good position then to deliver automation, then AI decision making, or kind of content generation over the top of that process. So what was the use case that Lima built? And this is just one of 10 that we've delivered this one, but we've got 3 others that we've delivered. And we've got 6 others that we're kind of looking at and are in kind of the next phase of adoption at the moment. But we started with our service operations function. So in terms of the way that we deliver some of our support services that existing customers will be somewhat familiar with, we have a service coordination team, service operations team that are responsible for the effective quality of how our tickets, whether that's incident, change, problem, release management, on-demand service desk tickets, are managed in our business, that we're adhering to SLAs, that we put the right information in the ticket, that we're tracking against the right contract, we understand the time that's been taken on those tickets. And historically, that's been a relatively admin-heavy, human-led task that, to be honest, had quite a high overhead in terms of that team. But it also meant that team was needing to scale as we continue to grow our customers. But there were problems in servicing other more important and valuable activities in relation to some elements of kind of project delivery and backup and DR services, those types of things. So we looked at that process. We did some work to remap that process, because we're an ISO house. We're 9001, which is primarily what the kind of business process is looking at. So we did have relatively good business processes documented, but they needed some updating. We had tools in place. Our ITSM platform, ConnectWise, is what we use here. And we had the opportunity to look at some technology from ConnectWise to overlay both process automation and also kind of AI decision making. So the aim here was to release capacity from that team to focus on high value tasks, and, being honest, divert our investment decisions away from service operations, because we can build operational efficiency in there, and invest that in the second and third line engineering teams, which are high value people that can drive real benefit for customers in terms of reduced ticket, better quality fixes, all of those types of things. So what did we do? We had to start by looking at the processes. We also had to kind of work with our staff, touching back on kind of the fear and concern element. They were fearful that this meant redundancies or reduction in roles or reduction in headcount. And so all the things I talked about around kind of taking those staff on that change journey, we did. It wasn't easy. It took several months to kind of overcome some of those objections and fears, but they're now fully embedded in the adoption process. They're fueling the next stage of efficiencies. They're building the process automation kind of flows, and they're coming with the recommendations to kind of take this to the next stage. But we understood our processes. We understood how everything flowed. We understood the data quality, because we were already ISO 27001. We had 90% of the security foundations in place, and we've just expanded those out slightly. But that's allowed us to stitch multiple processes together, automate and streamline data entry processes through AI and RPA, and ultimately remove the need for humans to do some of that first kind of ticket triage piece. That allows us to rapidly assign those tickets to the right engineers. It provides information to those engineers in terms of summation of what the issue is based on information that customers provided us, and also provides kind of ingestion of troubleshooting methodologies, whether that's third-party vendor contacts, whether that's technical recommendation, whether that's access to information and documentation we hold about our customers in relation to their environment. It fast tracks kind of some of the guidance that the engineering teams are using. So that means faster closure of tickets, better resolution for our customers, but also the ability to scale and do more with some of the existing heads that we've got. So we used a proprietary tool that was in our ITSM platform. That the tooling, and I've not really talked about much deliberately in this webinar, is not that important, because each use case will typically, particularly when you look at different verticals, will have different tooling. It will have different technology. There isn't a one-size-fits-all product or offering that will solve every AI need or challenge. But we use Copilot. We use some SaaS-based proprietary technology from our ITSM partner ConnectWise, and we've not really through much effort been able to learn those very quickly within a week and start to build out our workflows and our kind of AI decision-making trees that help kind of fast track these tickets and some of this. But that was a super impactful use case. It released effectively 60 working hours a week from our service operations teams just through one use case, and that's huge in terms of what that means for other areas of our service ops team, how we drive better quality and improvements in other areas that we want to work on. But we're just at the I'd say we're probably a bit further than the start, but we're kind of starting to roll out multiple different use cases now, and we're building on that knowledge and applying this methodology to conversation with our customers. We understand how to look at business process. We understand elements of the people side through. If you ever work with us on some of our security and cloud readiness assessments, you'll see there's kind of components in some of those other things that we do around security and data that feed into this journey. So we're able to help you with people elements, process, technology, security, data, with a view then to helping you work with your partners, your kind of business line of business app partners, to pick some of the right AI tools or use of things like Copilot and some of the things that's doing to kind of build those technology use cases. So with that, I'm going to pass back to George to wrap up. I think there's a few questions that have come through that we'll answer for you. So yeah, back over to you, George.
Thanks, Martin. Before we start going through any of the questions, and to give me a chance to collate some of them, we have a final poll, if you wouldn't mind engaging with it, which should be popping up on screen just now. We've got obviously some follow-up offers on the back of this webinar, so please feel free to tick any of the boxes that you're interested in it. Just leave that on screen for a couple of seconds. Okay, we've got some questions coming through. Fantastic. So we are going to start off with some questions. If anyone would like to add to these as we're going through, we'll try and get through as many as we possibly can do. But question number 1 for you, Martin. This is going to feel like 20 questions. So quick fire. So what's your advice, guidance and experience of managing practical expectations of board and exec and key customer stakeholders regarding AI?
Yeah, brilliant question. I think there's 2 lenses on that. One is the internal management with my stakeholders, and the second is the outward lens with customer. I think if I start with the internal one first, being honest, it's a little bit of a mixed bag with our internal stakeholders. So the primary driver internally is around efficiency. So driving efficiency and making sure that we remain competitive in the marketplace. Obviously, there's lots of other MSPs out there that will be doing similar things. So partly kind of managing their expectation in terms of the number of layers that need to be in place. Our stakeholders, as with some of our customers, have made some assumptions at times that you can roll out Copilot, for example, and that it will just do an amazing job. But there's a ton of things that you need to have in place. And I think the big one that both internally and externally is not always well understood is the business process element. The fact that you've got to have really good, mature business processes that are clearly defined, well mapped, and that they're adhered to and understood. But also the fact that you have to have at least the beginnings of a data strategy, because the things that these AI tools are deciding on or using is the quality of the information that you put into them. And if you've got garbage or poorly accessible data, you're gonna kind of fail and not get a huge amount of value out of it. So set an expectation around the need to build a data strategy and having kind of ease of access to data, and making sure that you've built or are building robust and mature business processes that can be used to map technology to those processes.
Perfect. Well, that leads quite nicely on to the next question, which is on data. So do you need to target all elements of data across your business, or can you start with something small and build up from there?
So it's definitely the latter, which is why I kind of in my content emphasize the need to start with a simple use case. If you try and build a complex use case at the beginning, or pick a complex use case, typically that will involve data from multiple sources. It could be multiple systems, it could be multiple departments that are entering or controlling that data. And if you can find a use case that is relatively isolated in terms of the people that interact with it, or is relatively controlled in terms of the cross-department flow, it will be much easier, particularly if you're relatively immature in those previous 2 points I made around data and process. It will be much easier to improve the quality of that data. So you'll still need to make sure that the data is in good condition, through data hygiene, making sure that you've got the right controls for entry and also kind of removal of data as well. But if you start with something relatively constrained and restricted and small, but is visible and has an impact, that's kind of the kind of, I won't quite call it a silver bullet, but it's a very powerful use case that typically the exec team can then get on board with, and or kind of other key stakeholders within the business. So start simple, start small. It helps you with kind of the data management piece massively, and it will allow you to build understanding and concepts that you can use to scale out in more complex use cases.
Brilliant. I think we've got one or two more questions. So we've got what have Lima done in terms of limiting access to AI tools that aren't deemed the AI tool of choice? Has it been straight blocked, or is there a training aspect for employees?
Yeah, so we engaged in this relatively early, before we rolled out and started building our use cases. So around about 2.5 years ago, we were relatively fortunate. We had the technology in place that would allow us to see what systems and kind of AI technologies were being accessed. That was through 365 technology, so nothing particularly difficult to access or deploy. But we had, mainly in line with kind of our ISO requirement, we get that visibility through the fact that we're ISO 27001 compliant, and we have generally good visibility of systems and data and tooling that our employees are accessing and for what purpose. And we were able to extend that into AI use cases. So that technology has feeds of all the different types of AI platforms that are out there. We could see initially what people were doing, and it was primarily our engineering functions for legitimate reasons, albeit well intended, but needed some oversight and governance, that we could see what they were accessing. Alongside that, we built our AI kind of use policies. So we work with our HR and people and culture teams to build those processes and kind of spend some time with our teams to kind of educate them on why that policy was important, what it meant, why Lima needed to safeguard its data and also our customer data, and make sure that our staff were not putting customer data into systems. It was absolutely imperative that was well understood. And then we started to remove relatively quickly access to those tools. It was relatively as simple as blocking those things. So the same as if you would block a website, more or less, but we were able to block apps, we were able to block access to certain website capabilities, that type of thing. So yeah, it was an education piece, a discovery piece, and then an implementation and a removal of access. But we did give them safe tools to use it. That's super important. You're not just removing everything. We gave them safe tools that we vetted that fit with our compliance requirements, that they were allowed to use, and allowed them to do their job, and they got in 95% of areas exactly what they needed from those tools.
Fab. Well, the next one is kind of leading on and asking you to expand some of that, I suppose, Martin. So it's a very simple question. What are the most significant risks associated with shadow AI? I think you've touched on some of them, but maybe expand slightly.
I think the biggest one is that somebody untowardly put something sensitive into the public domain. That's the ultimate concern, both, well, from my point of view, is kind of the person that's responsible for information security and governance. The fact that there is the real possibility, without the right controls in place, to leak with good intentions. Not that people have primarily been malicious in this, but the risk of people leaking sensitive data into the public domain. Because if you're putting data into ChatGPT or even the public version of Copilot or DeepSeek or any of those types of things, Gemini, that is then in the public domain. So with the right prompt, somebody could go and ask a question about your business or something in your field that would disclose information about your business that maybe at best compromises some of your intellectual property, at worst is a criminal offence. So ultimately, this is about governance and security, primarily making sure that those things are in place first before you kind of let the shackles off with this. It's difficult because a lot of this stuff is in the public domain already. Those tools are available, but the technology is there, relatively easy to control and manage what can and can't go in, but also have audit and visibility of what they are doing as well. So you can kind of continually monitor, educate, train your staff on the types of things that they're putting in. But that also then leads into kind of better kind of prompt design and helping them with some of their jobs to ask better questions of the platforms that they've got access to.
Fantastic. Well, I think that is all we have time for. If we haven't covered off your questions, please do contact us directly, and we'll hopefully set up a separate chat for you to ask away any other burning questions that you might have. But I suppose the final thing for me to say is thank you everyone for attending, and especially those that have stayed with us all the way to the end. And we really look forward to seeing you on the next webinar or our next event in person.